So, how is Nimona?
Metal.
Oh, all right. First of all, I will warn you before I get into full spoilers on this. This is going to be partly a review, but this is going to be me mostly talking about just how amazing this movie is through a pretty specific lens. But unlike when I talked about Across the Spider-Verse, where the degree to which I took a queer and explicitly trans reading of that movie is debatable as to how much it was intended or maybe most appropriate. Nimona is a movie that is explicitly gay, intrinsically trans, and yeah, I'm going to be running with that. But I'll give you a warning before I get into spoilers because we are going to do those. But Nimona is a animated film now available on Netflix. It actually was originally being done by Blue Sky Animation, the folks who did the Ice Age movies, which was owned by Fox. And they were mostly done with the movie. Then Disney bought Fox, and Blue Sky Animation came with it, and Disney shut them down instead of letting them finish the movie. Thankfully, Disney did allow Netflix to come in and buy the rights and the work that had already been done so that they could then bring on a team to finish up the work and now release the film. Nimona is something I've known about for a while because I've read the graphic novel. Well, I say graphic novel. It started out as a webcomic by N.D. Stevenson. And you might be familiar with his work elsewhere, as he was the main creative force behind She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. Now, N.D. Stevenson is trans. I believe currently identifying as masculine non-binary. He is now using he, him pronouns. I did check that before starting to do this. He'll sometimes go by Nate, but generally credited as N.D. Stevenson. And Nimona was effectively what got his entire career started. Nimona began as a webcomic, and it just developed its story over time, and that story was eventually collected as a graphic novel. Now, if you've never read the graphic novel, you should. Even if you've already seen the movie, the heart and core of it is very much there. But I would really, really recommend that even if you've seen the movie, don't think you've had the full experience, go and read the graphic novel as well. There's a rawness to it, an unpolished feel to it that's actually part of its appeal. And in a way, even kind of contributes to how it develops. Because, as I said, Stevenson was working on this from a young age and continued to work on it as he became better as an artist. And the result of that is the earlier parts of that graphic novel, when it's all collected, because this was done over years, you read it and it starts out much simpler, not a lot of backgrounds, pretty bare bones. And while maintaining that same core art style, as the story progresses and the scale and scope of the story grows, the artwork also becomes more intricate, more backgrounds, just more going on and more refined. And it actually complements the storytelling. This was kind of a happy accident. But all right, in short, go read it. It's great. So, Nimona, the film, is an excellent adaptation. It's a fantastic movie. Whether you've read the original or not, it's really good. You should see it. And it is the queer movie we really need right now. At a time when animated features, especially those aimed at a family audience, and this is rated PG, at a time when they do coy little dances around gender identities, sexuality, and even when it's there, it's handled in a very kid-friendly way. You know, you can look at something like Strange World, which did handle its gay young character fairly well, but, you know, it's basically a teenage crush. It just happens to be on a boy. There isn't a lot that goes into that, ultimately. There's something like Spider-Verse that has a heck of a lot that is allegorically trans, or at least can be read that way, but also is not explicitly so. As I said, this film has characters who are explicitly gay. More than that, they're adults. They're not children with crushes. They're adults with complicated relationships. And then there's Nimona herself, who is the embodiment of gender fluidity, non-binary, transgender mess.
Can you just be you, please?
I don't follow.
Go, you.
But I'm not a girl. I'm a shark.
She is that. And I don't even really mean that metaphorically, because Stevenson has been pretty overt about the fact that working on Nimona and working on that character was a way to channel a lot of his own confusion and uncertainty.
I didn't know what I was doing when I first started drawing comics over a decade ago. I just knew that my emotions were too big for my body and I had to put them somewhere. From these feelings, a character began to emerge. I named her Nimona for no particular reason. It just felt right. I didn't think I deserved love, but maybe she did.
The movie's great, even if, like, you can't pretend that two of the characters are not explicitly gay. Like, they kiss, they're gay. You can't pretend that isn't there. If you choose to not engage with the gender aspect of Nimona and the trans and queer and gender fluid and non-binary nature of her, you don't have to. It's still a good movie. But boy, does that layer mean a lot. And to pretend that it isn't there, you're really selling yourself short. I am going to start to go into more detail. And I am going to start to go into spoilers. So if you have not yet seen this movie, go do it. Right now. Now. If you have access to Netflix, go watch it. This video will be here when you're done. All right. So if you're still here, you've either already seen it or you don't care, which is a shame. But I can't make you care. So, let's start with the fact that we never get a firm answer to what Nimona is, where she comes from, whether something happened to her that allowed her to do her shape-shifting abilities, whether she was always able to do them, whether something happened. And we don't know what her quote-unquote true form is.
You want me to shift? You don't want me to shift? Pick a lane!
And now you're a boy.
I am today.
And we shouldn't. They are all her. Every shape and every form she takes is who she is. None of it's fake. It's just a different part of her. And I love that when she is asked, "What are you?" she only ever has one answer.
What are you?
I'm Nimona.
That's the only answer anybody should ever have to give.
I'm Nimona.
I'm me. The specifics beyond that, firstly, not really your business. Secondly, is your perception of me as a being worthy of respect, empathy, interacting with, is it contingent on the answer to that? Because if it is, then I definitely don't want you to have the answer. And if it's not, you shouldn't be asking.
People don't just turn into things.
I do.
Okay, fine. Well, then I have a million questions.
You get one.
It's great. It is perfect. And this really holds true to the core of who Nimona is from the beginning.
The shape shifting. I mean, does it hurt or does it... Sorry, small-minded question.
I feel worse when I don't do it. Like my insides are itchy. Then I shapeshift, and I'm free.
What if you held it in?
I'd die.
Good Lord, that's horrible.
I wouldn't die. I just sure wouldn't be living.
And there's some things that I think are really worth pointing out, especially put through a queer lens, and especially with everything going on now. Because Ballister, the villain that she becomes the sidekick to, she hooks up with him because he has been basically framed for something. He is the most wanted person in this kingdom. And so to her eye, oh, someone who's just as hated as me.
Why are you helping me?
Because I'm bored. And everybody hates you too.
Now, it's interesting to me that while she is very much operating on a level with a lot of anger, not unjustified anger, given how the world treats her, given that this world is literally built on a foundation of hating her, given that, her anger is pretty understandable. But you know what's interesting? Despite the fact that she jokes about killing people very casually, she never does. She has the opportunity. And she'll draw like her little artwork of running people through as the rhino or whatever. When she actually is the rhino, she just knocks people out of the way. She could, like she does, ton of damage, ton of destruction. She wants to cause chaos, but she has plenty of opportunity to kill people and doesn't. Because ultimately, for as angry as she is and as hurt as she is, what she really wants is to not be alone. And again, it's worth noting that anger is not unjustified. And if you're going to take a character like Ballister, who he and Nimona have similar goals.
Why would I trust you?
Because if you don't, you're gonna die in this closet.
But he very much takes a position of, look, we're going to do this quietly. We're not going to make a fuss. You could make a very easy comparison to a certain kind of queer person or even queer advocate. The kind who says the more in-your-face stuff, the pride parades with drag queens and people in assless chaps. That's too much.
Can you please just be normal for a second?
Normal?
I just think it'd be easier if you were a girl.
Easier to be a girl? You're hilarious.
You should go low-key, go unnoticed. That's how we can affect change.
I mean, easier if you looked human.
Easier for who?
And on the one hand, you could make the argument that Nimona represents a younger and more raucous generation of queer people. But that's only going by the visual coding. Because the reality is Nimona is older than Ballister. A lot older. She's always been here. Just as we have always been here. And she has no problem causing a scene, causing, I don't know, a riot. People need to remember, now and always and forever, that pride and the gay liberation movement, as we know it, started at Stonewall as a riot. So anyone who says we should be politely working within the system has forgotten their own history of why gay pride, and gay liberation, and gay rights, and queer rights, trans rights, all of them are necessary. And I think Ballister really works to, at least initially, embody a form of queer that is content to just, or thinks that the way to go about this is more low-key.
A lot of people aren't as accepting as me.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, when he finds out that the director of this group that he had worked so hard to be a part of is behind what has gone on, his only goal initially is to take her down.
But the Institute's not the problem. The director is.
He thinks the system that's in place is fine if he just removes the bad apple. The system is what's broken.
Everybody needs to know the truth. The system is jacked.
Yes, maybe certain people within that system are making it worse, are the embodiment of the worst of what that system is, but the system itself is not functioning in a way that should be allowed to continue.
I will not be quiet about this.
This video could damage people's faith in the Institute.
No duh.
Especially on the foundation it's been built on, of demonizing people like Nimona as monsters. And that's something Ballister has to learn. And even beyond that, the way that they try to expose the director and the way that she's just able to turn all that around right back on them.
It could be anyone. Your spouse, your child, your best friend, the person sitting next to you. None of us are safe.
The fact that she has the cannons that point out and away from the city and over the wall turned into the city.
Firing them will take out half the city.
Innocent people will die.
And so will the monster.
What are we doing?
What do you think happens when these restrictions are made of queer lives, of trans lives? We are seeing cisgender women harassed out of bathrooms because they look less feminine, quote unquote, than others. We see children yelled at track meets with adults saying that their genitals should be inspected to confirm what gender they are. Because these people have bought into the hatred of the monsters so much that if they can take us out, they don't care who else goes down. And that, frankly, goes beyond queer rights. It's the same with reproductive rights and the restrictions going on with abortions. They don't care that people will die because their lives would have been saved by a procedure that is now being outlawed. That children are being forced to carry offspring to term. They don't care about the collateral damage, and that is made literal in this. And I do not think that it is coincidental, or if it is, boy, does it feed into everything. The fact that Ballister is a cis gay man. And with all due respect, going by the statistics and recent history, cis gay men are the part of the queer community that has appeared to be most likely to ignore the plight of the others or even throw us under the bus.
You were using me! You wanted them to see a villain, someone else to hate, so you wouldn't be alone.
Although I do find it interesting to note that neither Ballister nor Ambrosius are white. Meanwhile, Todd, the worst, very much is.
Did you think I was gonna apologize for how I treated you? Oh my god, that's hilarious. You're so stupid. I love it.
As is the director. And the director is also really interesting to talk about because she shows the intersectionality of bigotry. She initially frames Ballister because she sees someone of lower status, of lower class, achieving what he is about to achieve as, quote, the first crack in the wall.
Allowing Ballister to hold the sword was the first crack in the wall.
Any disruption of the status quo as she believes it should be will result in a flood of everything she hates being allowed.
Can't you see this is what it wants? For us to let our guard down!
This is the purpose of hateful legislation, to clamp down on oppressed people now, before they get a foothold, before there is a single crack in the wall. That's why you can't just exist alongside them. That would be allowing them in. That would be allowing the crack to go unsealed.
And the crack grows bigger and bigger.
Her position, her beliefs, and her language feel very carefully chosen to me. And this is in opposition to what Ballister will ultimately learn, that the wall is only keeping out people.
I see you, Nimona.
He learns, as does Ambrosius.
That monster is a threat to our very way of life!
And what if we're wrong? What if we've always been wrong?
So don't take it as a condemnation. Don't take it as a lack of hope. They do learn. And they realize the system that needs to be dismantled if things are ever going to be okay. Lessons need to be unlearned. Ways of raising children to view others and condemn a certain kind of person need to be unlearned. And all of that is here. And it's not even subtext. It's textual. It's right there. I would have given anything to have a story like this when I was young. But I'm glad it's here now. Because Nimona embodies the pride, the joy, the anger, the sadness, the hopelessness, and the power of somebody reaching out and touching your heart. Literally, in the case of this movie, he literally touches her heart. The power of that is all in here. And it's fun, and it's funny, and it's raucous, and it's entertaining, and it's wonderful to look at, and the voice acting is great, and the soundtrack just kicks ass. This movie, especially knowing that we almost didn't get it, this movie is a miracle. And I can't be thankful enough to the animators, to the directors, to the studios that saved it. Most of all, to N.D. Stevenson for giving this story and for letting it be on the biggest platform it's ever had. And I hope that everyone who should see it does. And for the record, that's most people. Thank you for listening. I had to talk about why this is such an amazing movie to me. What did you think about Nimona? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living. But even if you can't help me out that way, there's links to other things I do in the description. Like, share, subscribe. You know what the things are. But what I want you to remember is that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council. I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Massive thanks to my Patreon supporters, and in particular, I want to thank Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Ruth, Oliver B., Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Melinda Walters, Jen, Leotha Boyd, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Fernabilax the Poodle, Robin Powell, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Kasparov, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, David Hall, Shayla Gourlay, and Rosalind Bennett. Thanks for your support. You can get your name in the credits too if you feel like hearing me possibly struggle with it for several times before getting it right.